that's on, and then you tap it. Just he probably doesn't have us on yet.
Okay.
Test 1, 2. Yeah, I guess we're not on yet. You have to turn us on.
I've never worn with these Johns.
And then tap it again. So tap the button, and then it goes, just tap it quickly, and now it's muted.
Okay.
So, you know, and then you just. Signal us if you can.
Okay. sing our first hymn together, which is 476, It Is Well With My Soul. 476, It Is Well With My Soul. Father, we're so filled with joy to be able to come in your presence again this evening, even in close of this Lord's Day, and to rejoice, knowing that you are near, and that whatever trials we face, whatever difficulties, whatever struggles, or in whatever circumstances we find ourselves, that we are safe in Jesus. We thank you, Lord, for that blessed assurance that we have in union with him by faith in him, that you are near, that you strengthen us, that you help us, that you hear us when we cry out to you. We pray that you would be with us this evening. We pray that you would bless our time together, encourage us as we ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen. Please be seated. It's a pleasure to welcome to you Ms. Becky Snyder and Brother Elder, Mr. Mike Kirkwich. Welcome.
Roth, you want to unmute that there? Thank you. Good. Sound good? I think we got sound. Good. Well, welcome everyone. Good to see you here. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to share about the ministry with Disciplemakers. Redeemer really has supported us from the very beginning, and so that's been like really exciting to see. Just over the years, the opportunities and just students coming to the church over the years, Josh being one of them. So it's just been really cool to see how God has worked through the ministry. So we're just going to share a little bit of update, just where things have been over the last kind of year and a half, what God's been doing. Obviously an adventurous, crazy year and a half. So, but just to share you a little bit as we start off, just to talk about Disciplemakers. You see our logo there is, reaching the campus, reaching the world. The idea for Disciplemakers is that we're going to target the college campuses because that's where people who are going to be the leaders, the future influencers in the world are learning and being trained. And so as you reach them, then you see as they know Christ, disciple others, they go out and they graduate and they start doing this at other places all over the world. And sometimes literally that's the case where we've had people graduate and go into different parts of the world. So it's really, that's kind of why we're targeting the campus, because we see it as a strategic time to reach people when they're making the biggest decisions of their life, right? What do I believe? What am I going to do with my life? And so we see that every year. There's a key time to reach them. And, this verse should be familiar to all of us, right? The Great Commission with Disciplemakers. Basically, we base it off this passage in Matthew, right? It says, "And Jesus came and said to them, 'All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to observe all that I have commanded you. And behold, I am with you always to the end of the age.'" This verse was particularly important for our ministry because what we wanted to see and what we try to focus on, the reason why we call ourselves Disciplemakers, is because we see, like, as we invest in key people who really want to know Jesus, right? But not just know it to keep it for themselves, but also want to train other people, also want to invest other people. What we're doing is we're doing what Jesus said and what he did by training the disciples and then sending them out, right? And then they trained more people and they planted churches. So what we do is we do that on the college campus so we can reach the students there and then try to get them involved in local churches so that when they graduate, they are going to make an impact wherever they're, like I said, they're going to go. And so hopefully, right, it doesn't stop with them. I think we would think we failed if they only they became Christians, which I wouldn't say that's a failure, right? But if they become a Christian, but they don't actually ever reach out to other people and spread the gospel message, that would be disappointing. That's not what we want to see. We want to see people who are willing to get outside themselves, right, and make more disciples, as Jesus calls us to do. So that's our goal. That's what we want to do and see. And the cool thing here is you just see examples of it. Like Becky right here is people reached out to her on the college campus where she was, and she'll share a little bit more about her time too. And people reached out to me when I was on the campus. The staff reached out to me. It's probably why I got involved in the ministry in the first place, right? So Becky and I are going to share more about what that's looked like over the last year and a half. So just this passage, we studied James last year, and this passage kept making me think of, when you think about this last year and all the things last year and a half, all the things that happened, this passage just always would come to my mind, right? In James 4:13 through 16, James says, "Come now, you who say, 'Today or tomorrow we will go into such and such a town and spend a year there and trade and make a profit. Yet you do not know what tomorrow will bring. What is your life? For you are a mist that appears for a little time and then vanishes. Instead, you ought to say, if the Lord wills, we will live and do this or that. As it is, you boast in your arrogance. All such boasting is evil.'" So I think particularly like this this here, like where James is like, yet you do not know what tomorrow will bring. I mean, that, how much have we all wrestled with that the last like year and a half, right? It feels like things are changing all the time. And, God does this deliberately to us, right? He throws us curveballs. He changes up the plans so that we have to depend on him. And I feel that's really what, like, I've learned. I know, Becky, I'm sure, would agree. She's learned as well over this year. So we're just going to share you a little bit about I'll kind of start the story kind of from my perspective, and then I'm going to turn it over to Becky as she came onto the team kind of in the middle of the pandemic, which is like, great time to join ministry, is right in the middle where you can't do a whole lot of ministry and there's a million restrictions. But so I'm going to start, and then Becky we'll hand over to Becky, and then we'll kind of go a little bit back and forth and share about what God's been doing. So this kind of goes back to spring break 2020, right? So this is about mid-March. And so what we did is with the students every year, we do a spring break trip. We do some kind of service trip with them. And we'll do this with like Bloomsburg, Bucknell, and Susquehanna, any students that want to go. So we were doing a service project down in North Carolina at a camp, Christian camp, and here we're digging like fiber optic cable. And the person there said, love your guys' help. One rule, do not cut the cable when you're digging this thing up, because we had to dig it up and move it. And we came really close to cutting it. One of the kids, there's a gash in it, didn't go through it. I'm like, guys, be careful, don't cut this cable, please. But it was backbreaking work. But we did a lot of like great things to serve this camp, and we do that every year. And it's just a really great bonding time for the students. So just working together and just having fun, going hiking together. Just an awesome time that we had together there. And probably this is probably one of the best spring break trips we were having. And then right in the middle of it, we start getting texts, right? We start getting emails that campuses are shutting down. Bucknell was first. They emailed the students. Students are like, what do we do? Should we go home now? Like they're saying, come home, get your stuff, and you have a little window to get your stuff, and you have to leave. So we were all, really thrown. And it was, for us staff, we're like, man, like, why does this have to happen now? We're having such a great trip. And the students just really pulled together and helped serve each other through it. But, right, and we were in the middle of nowhere, so we knew we were safe from the pandemic because there was nothing out there, right? It was very rural. But I think when that was just happening, it was just hitting the reality of, right, we really don't know what tomorrow will bring, right? We're having this great time, and all of a sudden, things just totally changed, right? And all the universities shut down. So we basically get back, and then basically for the rest of the semester, ministry is this, right? Everything is online. All we're doing is ministering to the students through online things. And so that was just like, all of us were scrambling. All of us staff were trying to figure out, so what Zoom? How do you use Zoom? Like, what do you do? Like, they can't hear me. It's not working right. It was just really stressful. And just sad, right, to move everything online. And I'm sure you guys all wrestled with that too, as a lot of things got canceled and we had to cancel church here and whatnot. But, God worked through it. God used it. And I know for me, I'm like, okay, well, I'm sure by the time fall rolls around, we'll be okay, right? There won't be any problems. And, so we moved to fall like 2020. And we just realized that, like, okay, there's a lot of restrictions on campus. Let's just try to do as much outside as possible, right? That's safer. People are okay with that. The school's okay with that. So we started doing things. The first 2 weeks of the semester, it was beautiful weather. We did like picnics at the park, just different kind of outdoor things that we were doing. And I was like, okay, I think we can make this work. I think we can build community with these students. It's possible to, we'll just have to do some of the online stuff, some in-person stuff outside until it gets too cold. Then 2 weeks into the semester, the cases started shooting up exponentially on campus. It's like, 40, then 80, then 120, and they just said, forget it, we're shutting down the campus. Like, all groups have to cease meeting immediately. Everything is moving online, and for me, it felt like I'm losing my job. Like what we do, right? Doing outreach and evangelism. How are we going to do this, moving online. Just to give you an example that how campus turned to a ghost town, right? This is the Chick-fil-A, right, on campus. There's always tables, tons of people here eating and stuff like that. They moved everything out. Almost all campus, I walked around, there was no place to sit, no place to do anything, no place to hang out. Almost like, and I've talked to people, they said it could have been like maybe only 10% of the students, maybe 20% stuck around. All of them went home. So they weren't even around to minister to, except a few core group of students. And so it was just like very disappointing. I had just started changing my mindset to say, all right, God, this is how we're going to do it. And then losing all these opportunities was really hard. Never had this happen, right? And as a lot of us haven't had this happen to us. So I really just had to trust the Lord and be like, all right, God, what are you doing here? Right? It doesn't matter what I think about the pandemic. If other people think differently and say, we're closing things down, things are closed down. So I got to deal with it. We have to figure this out. So we did have a few opportunities, which was really cool. One was I just realized, okay, let's just keep doing things outside for any students that are around. So it started getting cold. I said, what do we do when it gets cold, right? If we have people over our house out for dinner. So Becky probably remembers this a little bit. We just pulled like one of the space heaters outside, and so we just have like the student that's the guest sit here and just pumped heat on them like the whole time, and they're like, hey, this actually feels pretty good. I'm not too cold. And the rest of us are like shivering, but we're like, good, I'm glad you're comfortable. We just did whatever we could to say, okay, how do we like think outside the box and just do stuff that the campus is going to be okay? Because we don't want to get on the bad side of the campus. It wouldn't be helpful for our group. We could actually get our group suspended, right, if we broke some of the rules, if we tried to skirt the rules. So we were trying to be like, okay, let's just do what we can. So we just had to get creative in ministry. And it's cool. One of the girls that we had over ended up as a leader now in the group, which is so cool. She had stuck around. She was local, and so we got to know her really well, and she became one of the leaders. Becky will talk about another girl that we had over that she was reaching out to as well a little bit later. So basically, we just moved everything online. We did our large groups. We did a lot of stuff online. That was just what we had to get good at. We had to figure out how do we do this, right? And how do we roll with what God is doing in His providence right now? And how do we minister to the students? So we moved our large group online, and we had our leadership team meeting online with the smaller group. And so, we went through James and First Peter, right? First Peter. I should know this. I gave the talks, right? First Peter we did in the spring. And the students, you could see they were appreciating. Even though they were tired of being on Zoom all day with their classes, they still came. Many of them still came to hear God's word in the evenings, which was really cool. So we also had to move our conferences online. We haven't had any conferences with the students for, a year and a half since the pandemic started. It's just too complicated, too many restrictions. And so we had to move our conferences online as well. So I had to speak. This looks pretty cool, doesn't it? Like our media team actually made a little mini studio so that we actually could do it online and make it look quality so people aren't it's cutting out and people are having a hard time hearing. So I had a chance to do a workshop on how do you know God's will for your life, which is a constant question students are asking all the time. Some of you might have that question too, right? So, but you know what? We made it work, and God really used it. And so I was struggling a little bit with just discouragement. But one thing that was really cool is how God gave us reinforcements. So you might recognize one of these two ladies up here. Right during this period of this crazy pandemic year, God brought 2 new staff here. And so Becky came in first in the fall, like kind of maybe, middle of the fall. And then Christiana finished her fundraising, came at the end of the fall. And in the summer, we had no idea that they were going to be joining us and that they'd be placed on our team. So this was like a huge boost for us and an encouragement for us to have them come on. But it was a little hard to say, okay, you're here. What should you do, right? How do we help you get involved in ministry here? So it's just really exciting to have Becky join us. And so I'm going to turn this over to her, and she's going to talk a little bit about her experience and what some of the ministry she was doing.
Okay, I think I turned this mic on right, and I'm really proud.
Yeah, you're good.
Yeah, so I graduated in 2020. So I actually fundraised over the summer, and the Lord brought in my support quicker than I was expecting and threw me right into actually the day after Bloomsburg announced that they were going to be online. I got placed there. So I never got to experience Bloomsburg in person really last year, at least for the first semester. But I serve at Bloomsburg University with the Women's Fellowship, and then I also serve at Susquehanna University, which is Susquehanna right here. When I first started, I was the only full-time female staff, so pretty much 3 universities, females, were like overseen by me, which is frightening as a college graduate. But this is from our fall conference. This was outside, distance, with masks on. This is like the reality that I lived for a bit. But yeah, we basically had to throw our own fall conference and host things, and I really had no idea what I was doing, but God was good. But yeah, this is just a lot of the people who are involved in the fellowship. Last year, God really just brought a lot of new faces to Susquehanna. It's a pretty new fellowship. The fellowship almost doubled, if not tripled, since last year, this year. And a lot of the people who are in this picture are now on the leadership team there, which is really exciting and encouraging. This is a student who was a freshman last year. Her name is Becca. She actually became a Christian over the pandemic. She was a senior in high school and got sent online, and she realized, man, I don't know if I'm actually a believer, and I want to start to take my faith seriously. So for the last 6 months of her education, she devoted to being involved in the Bible, in Bible studies, and other types of Christian fellowship. And then she came to Susquehanna and decided that she was going to recruit everyone in her freshman dorm to come to a Bible study. So pretty much a lot of the people that came to the fellowship were because of her, inviting them, because we can't really go into the dorms, especially during a pandemic. So yeah, I've just really been thankful for Becca's labors on campus, and now she serves on the leadership team, and is actually really interested in ministry long term. She's a music major and is trying to figure out where the Lord will have her serve with her gifting. But yeah, I lead a Bible study with her this year, which is really cool to see how the Lord flips that around. This is into the spring semester. The spring semester we have a women's conference every year. It's one of my favorite conferences, but last year we had to plan it ourselves, which was very stressful. But we ended up having to do 3 different separate women's conference watch parties for each of our schools. So this is at Bloomsburg. Bloomsburg actually came into our basement here, and they did their watch party. This is some of the girls in the fellowship from Bloomsburg. Actually, a few of them are now on the leadership team as well. We had to separate because of COVID regulations. A lot of them couldn't intermingle between schools. So I was serving at Susquehanna, and we basically hosted a watch party through the book of Colossians, and we talked about what it meant to be rooted in Christ. So a lot of these women at Susquehanna now are also on the leadership team. The idea is we reach out to believers and non-believers, and the believers, if they feel the Lord is leading them in such a way, they'll end up serving on the leadership teams, where they will then be in charge of leading Bible studies on campus and actually living out the Great Commission for themselves as student leaders. So then when they graduate, they can become leaders in the church, or just be comfortable leading a Bible study. So it's pretty exciting to see the growth of these women. But last year in particular, a lot of the people that were involved in the fellowships were the leadership teams. So we got to actually dig deep into relationship with them and disciple them. And a lot of these women I got to do great discipleship time with. This is your picture.
Yeah. So with the guys, right near the end of the spring, things started opening up. So I was need to get the guys together, get them to know each other. So here's at Quaker Steak and Lube. So we were doing wing night with the guys, which is always a hit, getting all you can eat wings. We were loving this. So it was a really fun time. And one of the guys, this guy here, he took the hot spicy wing challenge. And this, I got this picture as he's eating it. So that didn't go too well, but he did eat all of them. I was impressed. I did not think he could do it, but he did make it through and eat all of the wings. But yeah, that these guys just really encouraging. Like this guy here, Jason. I had a chance just to go walking with him and Aaron here. Like just take walks with them outside. I just learned. I actually like this, going walking, getting my exercise, and going walking with the guys and just talking through life. And I also would have them study a passage and said, let's discuss the passage. So I think both of them, we were going through Romans and just walking them through the Gospel of Romans and just talking about it as we were walking. We have our phones and we just like pull the passages up and talk about it. And I know Jason said this more recently in his testimony, he really appreciated that. That really helped him understand the scriptures better and the gospel. So it's just really cool. And then it's cool. Jason particularly, he's been like inviting people, like multiple people, guys. He just saw one guy had this hat that said something about Jesus on it in the cafeteria. He just goes, I'm just gonna go talk to this guy. So he goes up and says, that's a pretty cool hat. Like, what, and he starts talking to the guy. It turns out the guy's a Christian. He's like, you want to come to our group? He's like, yeah, I've been like looking for something like that. And so now the guy's like coming to our his name's Jason too. He's been coming to our fellowship. So yeah, and he's invited more than one person like that. So it's been really cool seeing what he's been doing and how he's been reaching out. So it's just really cool. See how God has been working, and that kind of like leads us up to this fall. Praise God. I mean, I know you guys have been hearing me ask prayer requests, right? Please pray that we just stay on campus this semester and just, that they don't overreact, they don't shut things down again. And praise God that so far it's been, cases have been there, but not out of control like they were in the fall. And so far we pretty much can do most of what we normally do, except a few things like wearing masks and a few other restrictions. So it's been really encouraging just to be back in person with the students. It's just such a blessing now to be able to do that. Like, you don't realize how you take it for granted until you just don't have it. So that was just encouraging. And we've just been doing like getting the students together, playing. This is actually at Susquehanna. Do you want to share about this one? These pictures here?
Yeah. So Susquehanna has a really big volleyball net outdoors, and this was like the first day of classes, I think. But we just like went up to the volleyball court, and like a bunch of non-Christians came. We just played volleyball with them and talked about Jesus, which is really fun. But Susquehanna is a little bit more receptive to stuff like that, just going up and sharing about Jesus. These are some of the girls that I hung out with over the summer. Two of them I disciple, so we just continued discipleship over the summer. One of them is our student leader. Another one is just a really influential girl in the fellowship. She actually comes to church here, so you should know her. This is our fellowship, large group meetings. There is a time of like a talk through. We're going through the book of John right now. I don't know if you have a slide on that, but
I do, yeah. I'll talk about it.
Okay. So it's masking indoors, but a lot of it is really similar to what we're used to. Actually, Susquehanna has never had a large group meeting, so this is something new that we're doing this year, which is pretty exciting. But there's like a talk through a passage. We have worship, which I've been helping on the worship teams, which is pretty fun. And we have a testimony where one of our student leaders or like influential students in the fellowship will share about how Jesus changed their life, which is a really, really great opportunity to share the gospel with people, because no one's really gonna fight you about their life story. So it's a really great opportunity to share the gospel. This is a really cool opportunity I've had this past year. As me and Christiana have moved in together, and we live in an old farmhouse, and we've been able to actually host people from Susquehanna, and oddly enough, people from Bloomsburg will drive 40 minutes to our house, which I'm like, okay, you do that. But on Fridays, I've been having students over for desserts and a Disney movie, the DD. It's supposed to be funny. But these are some girls from our fellowship. They come over on Fridays, most Fridays, and hang out. And a few of them are not Christians. Some of them are on our like leadership teams, but just getting people in community, which then like stirs into bringing them to fellowship and hearing about the gospel. And then this is a Bible study we did over the summer at our house. Christiana serves mainly at Bucknell University, and there's a pretty not high, but a lot of the international students are very interested in the gospel there, and they tend to like cling together and want to like go places together. So she actually hosted a international student Bible study through the Psalms that I got to help with, where we like cooked a meal and then went through the Psalms together. So there was people from like I think 4 or 5 different countries, which is weird. You're like middle farms and there's people international. It's crazy. That was a great opportunity to share the gospel. This is indoors at one of our leadership team meetings. At Susquehanna, we've been going over the book of 2 Timothy, mainly because a lot of them are young people being entrusted with the gospel, and I love the book of 2 Timothy, and I love that Paul is like passing the baton to Timothy, who's the younger minister. So we've been going through that with them. Do you want to talk about this picture? This is at your house.
Yeah. So this was a funny situation. So we were going to have the students. It was always a lot of people show up, and you can tell a good turnout came to this. We take them down to the local ice cream shop, Brennan's Big Chill in Bloomsburg. If you've been there, you know it's really good. So I'm like, I'm just heading up to campus. Let me just stop by, let them know we're going to bring a big group. I go to the door. It says, closed today for construction. I was like, what? Like, all these students are like, literally, we have 15 minutes. I'm like, what do I do now? All these new people are showing up. So I called Lynn. I'm like, Lynn, let's just have them to our house. We'll run out. I'll run get Rita's ice, and I'll bring it over, and we'll just make it work. Like, by the time they get there, we'll have it at our house. And the students, I don't even realize what happened. So we just said, okay, let's have them all over. And so, yeah, they all came over. We just hung out in our backyard. I set up a table outside, and we pulled this whole thing together in 20 minutes. And it worked. It worked. And they had a great time getting to know each other and stuff like that. So you can see some of our kids there. There's Lynn there. And Lynn is she's really helpful in terms of, using our home to minister to the students. Because she has her hands full, obviously, with all of our kids, but she does a great job in, when we have students over for dinner or emergency things like this, setting it up, and just helping me help the students. And through this, Lynn always gets to know some of the girls and has opportunities to minister to the ladies there. So it's just really awesome. Lynn also does a lot of administrative things for me too, behind the scenes when she has time. So that's a blessing to me. Stuff you wouldn't see, but she definitely does and takes care of us. So so we did this kind of in the beginning of the semester. Here's a picture of our large group meeting at Bloomsburg. Here's one of our other staff is speaking up front this week. So it's been great to be able to do this. I wasn't sure if they were going to let us do this year, but it's been awesome. And we've been working through the Gospel of John. And just basically each week talking about what does it mean to believe in Christ, right? And we have consistently a lot of non-Christians coming particularly at Bloomsburg. I'm not familiar, and I think there's some definitely at Susquehanna as well. So we're focusing on what does it mean to believe? How is Jesus unique? And that he says, right? Jesus, he is life, right? He is life, and you can only find true life, eternal life through him. And so we're just using that and talking about that. And I remember 1 week, one of the girls afterwards came up to me and said, she's like, you've been mentioning this idea about being saved. She's like, what does being saved mean? I was like, oh, well, what do you think it means? And she's like, well, I think, as a Christian, you're supposed to just, try really hard and live a good life and try to please God. And I'm like, well, that's not really what being saved is about. Let me tell you, what being saved is about. And I was able to just explain the gospel to her, that we're actually saved from God's wrath because of our sin, and Jesus saves us. So she's like, oh, okay, I didn't know that, So it was just a great opportunity to talk to her about the gospel. And there's been I've just been so encouraged. I've seen the biggest turnout of guys in many years. Guys that are coming out. Usually guys are really hard to recruit, particularly at Bloomsburg. They're kind of cagey. They don't want to commit right away to stuff. They'll come, more girls will just come out, but the guys will kind of come here and there. Maybe they'll show up even their sophomore year. They don't start coming consistently. I mean, this year, I'm having a hard time keeping track of all the guys that are coming. I mean, there's got to be well over 15 guys that I'm trying to reach out to, and I would say about 7 or 8 of them have been pretty consistent, regularly coming. And these are all new, brand new students coming to stuff. And then the other guys that are coming, we just had another new guy come this last week that I've been texting for 4 or 5 weeks. He's like, I think I'm going to come tonight. I'm like, I'm glad I didn't give up on them, like, so it's just cool to see how God is working. And yeah, and many of those, several of them are not Christians, I can tell just by meeting up with them and talking to them. So it's just really awesome seeing what God is doing. So there's a lot of things we could talk about. I'm going to give you guys a chance to ask questions just to see what you guys are interested in, or if you have any questions for us. Here's just here's just a picture of our staff. We just got together to celebrate Becky's birthday. So here's like all of us. And so there's Christiana, she's the other lady who joined us. There's Zach, and some of you know Zach and Heather. I know Roth knows them, and Zach's helped like leading our team and works at Bucknell and Susquehanna a lot. And so we're all just like it's just fun to be together, to have our team grow and just having the opportunities to minister to the students, right? To bring them the gospel, to make disciples. And I think, just to conclude, I think, you think back to the Great Commission, right? At the very end, right? Jesus says, "Surely I'll be with you always to the end of the age." I think this last year and a half, for us on campus, but right, I even think for us as a church, right? We felt that, right? That Christ has been with us even through this horrendous adversity we've gone through, right? This last year and a half. But, and I know we've seen it as a church, but we've definitely seen it in the ministry on campus as well. So we're just really excited to see what God keeps doing on the campus. So just keep praying for us in that regard, that God would raise up more disciples on the campus. So let me just stop there. We've got a few minutes. If you guys have any questions, love to answer any questions you might have about ministry, what we do, the campus life, anything like that you're interested in. Yeah.
Do you guys have a website or like any social media you have? So that,
Beth, we have so many social medias. That was like all of last year.
Like something like that.
Yes.
This all seems so interesting.
Yep. Beth, we have our Disciplemakers website, and we have like resources. We have old talks, like different resources you could look at. That's one thing actually, which has been good, is the pandemic forced us to use social media more. Like we didn't even somebody else started Instagram at Bloomsburg, and I just don't use Instagram. I wasn't even on Instagram. So I made it my goal. I'm actually going to get on Instagram. I'm actually going to try to post stuff. My goal was, I think, 10 posts. I think I got 6, so it was like, for improvement. But we've had multiple students find out about us at Bloomsburg just because we're on Instagram. And they came and visited. We're like, oh, I guess this is the way the students find stuff, right? And those of you who are younger know this, right? People are just on this. That's how they communicate. So I think it forced us to actually get better at social media and other things like that. Yeah. Good question. Yeah, Jeff, and then Carl.
You said that you share about Jesus at Susquehanna and other places. Why is that?
Yeah, I think it's just there's different vibes at each school for sure. Susquehanna was just more receptive last year because I could actually be on campus last year. Bloomsburg, there was 3 students that I could meet with at all. Susquehanna, they all just know each other. So you'll be on campus, since it's such a small campus, everyone knows each other. So if you're meeting outside and reading the Bible with someone, they'll know someone walking by and invite them over. So it's just a different opportunity than Bloom. But yeah. Bloomsburg we've had definitely way more non-Christians at Bloomsburg, for sure. And it's just so super normal to have non-believers come to our large group meetings.
Yeah.
Or Bible studies. We're reading through the book of Ephesians in our women's Bible study, and we have to keep stopping to answer questions like, who's Paul? When we're on the 3rd chapter, and they just are randomly popping in. But yeah, it just depends on the year. It depends on the school.
Yeah, there's a different culture at each campus. Susquehanna is less than 2,000 students. Mm-hmm. So it's like a big high school. Everybody kind of knows each other. Bucknell's about 4,000. So it's a little bit still smaller, and then Bloom is over 9,000. So it's a little bit, you get lost in the mix at Bloom. It's just then you have state school versus private school, totally different vibe between the students, and even during the COVID, they all had different responses. All the way from we could care less, these rules are stupid, to we have to keep the rules. Disciplemakers, we want you to be even stricter than you are.
Yeah.
So so that made it so confusing to try to plan things, because we had we've all seen, right? Everybody has different reactions to the pandemic. And we saw that whole spectrum with the students even, and we had to learn how to deal with that. And it was not always easy, but we worked through it. We made it work. So, yeah. But yeah, that's a good question, Jeff. Carl, do you had something you want to ask?
Yes, I have two questions. Just a simple one. What is, who are the other two people on your leadership team up there? I think I identified everybody, but
That's Chris.
Oh, yeah.
Chris and his fiance.
Yeah, so this is Chris, and yeah, that's his fiance, Laura. And yeah, so Chris primarily works at Susquehanna, but he also helps out at Bucknell. And sometimes he'll speak to up here at Bloomsburg. We try to share this teaching load, so if we do a talk, we'll try to do the same talk at the other campus the next night, etc. So, and so yeah, so that's Chris, and that's Laura's fiance. So I think you know the rest of these guys. This is the Guggenheim's children here, but you know all these people here. So yeah, what they're there.
My second question was, could you detail a little bit like what a month is like for you? Do you have a large group meeting every week or once a month, and then how often do you do these leadership groups within the colleges? How does that work?
Yeah, that's a good question. So what we do is every week it will look like most of the campuses will have one to three Bible studies going. Most of them have like at least 2 Bible studies. Bloomsburg, we have a men's and women's Bible study that we lead, and also a co-ed one. We meet with the leadership team once a week to go over stuff, teaching them how to actually study the Bible, going through a passage with them. And then we have a large group meeting. Bloomsburg's is Wednesday, and then Susquehanna and Bucknell are Thursday nights. So that's every week, yeah. So we do those things consistently week in and week out. Plus, what we try to do is meet students one-on-one to build the relationship, maybe talk through issues they have, or study the Bible with them one-on-one, just different things like that. So yeah, so that's a consistent, like on a weekly basis, we're trying to do that. And yeah, then a lot of other times like prepping, teaching, and different things like that as well.
And then you have a larger conference in the spring and fall?
Yeah, we have, yep. So our fall conference is coming up at the end of the month. And yeah, that's for all the colleges. Yeah, so here's like a map. This is like all the colleges we're on right now. So we're on 19 colleges, which is really exciting. I think the last time I probably didn't update, I think we're on like 16. So we've added like 3 more. And so we're on like this region of PA right now, which is great. And our goal though actually is to get on 25 campuses by year 2025. That's our goal. So we had a pandemic year that really shortened that and actually reduced the amount of new staff we've had come on for a year. So it's going to be challenging. I think we can still do it. We have a couple of campuses we are currently working on that we don't count them officially yet, but we're hoping God will open up doors there at those campuses as well. So yeah, good question. Lynn, did you want to add something?
The other thing that you all do once a week, like you do, you guys have a staff meeting, like you all meet together.
Yes. Yep.
Just and to kind of help each other in training
right.
Staff and like talking about your role in the team. And then we also have a camp at the end of the whole school year. So that's what we belong to. It's called Focus. So that's another large that we're hoping to do.
Yeah, we're hoping to do this next year, which we should be able to by then, I would imagine, definitely. So, yep. Yeah, thanks for adding those things in, Lynn. Yeah, Hannah?
If a student goes to a college that's not listed on those 19, but it's nearby, are they committed to attend your Bible studies?
Yeah. I mean, 100%. we do have situations like that. And actually, that's a great way for people to want us to come, because they'll come to the Bible study and they'll say, man, I wish we had this on our campus. This is the amount of number of campuses by state. And you can see Pennsylvania has 544. We're 3rd in the nation as far as campuses. And a lot of those campuses, some of them are very small tech schools. It'd be really hard to have a consistent ministry at. But a number of those schools are big enough that you could have a ministry there, but there's no full-time missionary working at those campuses. So for us, we're like, there's opportunities to keep reaching out and keep spreading the gospel. So yeah, if another stat from some of those campuses that's how we start them. They're like, I want this. Can I come to your conference? Can I come to your Bible study? And we're like, yes, like come over. And that's sometimes how, a new ministry gets started. Thanks. Bob, you had a question?
Yeah, I was wondering how, or maybe if you could talk about the organizational structure of Disciplemakers. So it's not just Pennsylvania schools, but I guess how is the organization structured, and where do you fit in that? Where does Becky fit in? Is your work day exactly the same, or do you have different roles? And then what's the role of your student leaders?
Right.
And how do they fit in?
So, do you want me to answer this?
You can answer the beginning parts.
Okay. Yeah, you can talk about your role, right?
Okay.
So we have a headquarters in State College. We have like an executive team. We also have a board of directors that oversees us as a nonprofit. So the headquarters, we have a bunch of staff that work there. They handle the donations and all the logistics, human resources, all that kind of stuff, running our conferences. And then Disciplemakers, so let me go back to this map here. So in these areas, there are different campuses, like teams of staff that will work together, like kind of in these regions. And so we have about like 5 or 6 teams that work together. So we work at Bloomsburg, Bucknell, Susquehanna, so we all staff work as a team. So there's a team leader, and then like those teams are working together, which we didn't used to have, and we moved to the team model, and it's just been so much better because you have people to help out. Like if I'm not there one night, Becky would know what to do, if I'm sick or something. So like we really just help each other at the different campuses. And so, so that's sort of how the structure filters down. Do you want to share about you?
My role? Yeah.
Or you can say about our roles particularly, but like, go ahead.
So we have a team leader, and then the rest of us, there's like different positionings, but mainly my focus is on the female ministries, and yours is on the male ministry. Our days, I don't know what your day looks like. You have a family. I don't have a family that I'm living with. So I have more free time. Like my ministry isn't divided, so I could be on campus from like 1 to 10 or something. It's like the exact opposite of Hannah Munger. We always joke about it. But yeah, like mine's a little different. During the pandemic, it was different because you could just hop on a Zoom call and you could be in 2 different areas at one time. But now you got to drive. And
it's a lot of driving now.
Yeah, I don't like driving. That's the one bummer. But it's for the Lord, so it's fine.
Yep. Yeah. And so, so basically you come on, like Becky is like apprentice staff, then you become approved staff once you've been doing ministry for about 3 years, usually roughly. There's different training things, and you get promoted. And then there's staff trainer, which that's like the role I have, so that you've been on staff for a while, you've grown in a lot of different areas, then like you can start training other staff. Then there's like team leaders, and there's other kinds of roles that you could fulfill like in Disciplemakers as well. So that's a little bit about organizational stuff.
And how about this? You mentioned student leaders. It sounds like
Yes.
they get additional kind of training beyond the large group.
Yeah. You want to talk about that? Yeah.
They're like believers that are already Great Commission minded, so they're already making disciples. So pretty much we just give them the tools to keep doing that and train them in that. So they're like little missionaries on campus as students. And a lot of times these people will become like either leaders in their churches or missionaries. Like I went to school with people who like are overseas now. Or like I was on the student leadership team board and now I'm a missionary. But yeah, they just get special training to keep doing the work of discipleship with others.
Yeah, and we have to constantly be training leaders because we lose them every 4 years. Sometimes faster if they're like really motivated and they graduate early, which I hate. I'm like, wait, you're graduating early? No, I want you to be here. I'm like, I guess it's good. You're graduating early. But it's sad when they leave early. But so we have to constantly be training leaders all the time because they graduate so quick. So maybe one more question if there is one. Any more? Any other questions? Josh.
Any advice for things that we as a congregation can be doing to encourage college students to come, or be more welcoming for college students who might come? Anything helpful?
Yeah, I mean, I think just when you see the college students here, just get to know them. Try to chat with them after church. I think for a lot of college students, right, they're coming in, they don't really know anybody. It's like a new church for them. Just like being in a new church, like you just don't know anybody. So and they'll tend to stick together because they know each other. But so you're going to have to take initiative to go over and say, hey, it's nice to meet you. And as you do that week by week and see them, you get to know them, and it's really fun. And you could maybe invite them over for a meal or like do something with them. Like a lot of students, they get sick eating on campus. So if you give them a home cooked meal, they'd be super excited about that. Like that's for sure.
Yeah.
I don't know. You have any other ideas? Like.
Yeah, well, just an encouragement. They have felt really welcomed by you guys. I feel like there's like a squad that comes every single week that you guys come up to them and talk to them and welcome and encourage them. Like they feel like that sticks out from other churches that they've been to.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, like they're not really used to hymns or psalms, which is I vibe with, so that's fine. But yeah, like the fact that you guys are welcoming and encouraging and like talking to them, and they're all different ages talking to them, like it feels like home to them, which is really encouraging.
Yeah. So I think, and that's just true for everybody. And I think you guys have all done a great job as a church welcoming new people. It's just maybe a little harder, right? If you're not with college students, you're like, what do I talk to them about? Just go up, ask them about their major, ask them what they want to do with their life, where are they from, like, and they'll you'll get to know them fast. Like, it's really fun. And that's a good word that they feel encouraged that you guys are doing that. So we really thank you guys for doing that. So yeah, and when when we used the building for the One Disciplemakers event, that was awesome. So we appreciate Redeemer being generous with the building and allowing us to use it for ministry stuff. So might be putting a request for a Christmas party for the end of the year, probably for the Bloomsburg students here as well. So so thanks for your questions. Probably should wrap up here, but thank you guys for your questions. Thank you for the support that you've given us and the ministry. It's just been really encouraging to have that support from you guys. And we'll keep updating you guys on what God is doing on the campus now and how he's making new Christians there, which is really awesome.